Hi all, welcome to Cyber Warfare Labs AWS Cloud Red Team course. In this module, we will discuss about how we can compromise web-based vulnerability to getting the initial access on containerized environment. So you can see here in this diagram, suppose there is one application which is running there on containers, and containers also running on EC2 or Fargate nodes, and these nodes is part of either a EKS or ECS cluster. So how attackers from the internet, they got the initial access on these container, and after that they can bypass the protections or bypass the sandboxing to compromise the full nodes. After compromising these worker nodes, they can compromise the whole clusters and EKS or ECS environments. So this is how we'll discuss about how we can perform a remote code execution vulnerability and how we can get the initial access or initial foothold on AWS environment. So you can see here, suppose there is one application which is running there in containerized environment, either ECS or EKS. So suppose this is the URL where application is hosted. So I'll just copy this URL, open a new browser, and I just paste it here. So you can see here, this is the URL, or this is the application. I can perform a remote code execution here. So this is basically vary from how you get the remote code execution. Suppose you can see here, now I can execute the commands on the containerized environment. So basically all the command will be executed here in this particular containers, because application is running on top of these containers. So you have to find out the way to bypass this containerized environment to access the full node, and then you can compromise the full cluster. So you can see here I am able to execute the commands on the container. Let's see what is the uname -a. You can see this is running on this deployment. This is basically Linux machine or containerized environment where this particular application is running. So I can execute the command there in this container. So this, maybe there is a multiple container on this particular host, so you have to bypass, you have to do all this activity. But this is a case where you have to identify, the first is how we get the initial access. Using initial access, you have to identify how we can get the remote code execution vulnerability in one of the applications. So if you have a remote code execution vulnerability, you can access the container, you can take the reverse shell, you can perform the other operating command execution type here. So let's see this compromise, this typing who am I. So you can see this is the user rights I have on this container at the moment. So this is how you can get the initial access. But let's see, when we discuss about EKS cluster environment, you can see this is I am as an attacker, and this is a load balancer IP, and you get the initial access on any of the container which is running there in worker node. So first you have to bypass the protection of sandboxing, containerized, then you can access this particular worker node, and then you have to compromise whole worker node which is running there, and then you have to compromise the whole cluster. So this is how you can perform red team activity. But to getting the initial access, first you have the initial access on a particular container where this particular application is running, if you found any RCE. Second case, if you found that this containers is running on basically running on a Kubernetes environment, you can have options to exfiltrate a few more things. So suppose if container is running on EKS environment, or the worker node which is part of EKS cluster, you can use this thing to list it down all the secrets. Basically these are the service account or secrets. Let's just copy here the same. I just change this thing to see list of files or folders there. So you can see in this particular folder where run secrets, Kubernetes IO, and the service account. So we can see we have a certificate, we have a namespace, as well as we have a token. So you can use these information to access your master node or the API or the endpoint which is running on the master node or control plane. That will also give you the basically what rights this service account have, what rights this token have. You can also get the same rights. Maybe you have a rights on the pod level, you have a rights on the whole container level. So it's basically depend upon what rights this account have. You can also get the same right, and you can also get the initial access there. Same like let's see, you can see these are the files there. You can also see the content of these files, and you can use those things to perform this action. So I just copy this one, cat, and you have to replace the file name. So let's see token. So this is the token information. You can see, you can also view the certificate. You can also view namespace as well. As let's see the CA and here you have to replace this ls command to cat command. So you can see these are the certificate informations. You can also view the basically namespace. Default. So this container basically is running on the default namespace. So you by default you have a rights on this particular pod. So it's basically depend upon what rights this service account have. The token we got now, what rights this token have. So you will be also have the same rights, and you can get the initial access by compromise this one. So this is the way you can get the initial access. Generally this is the case because container mostly organization have the containers or Kubernetes environment to running the web applications. And when it's a web application, it can be accessible from the globe. And when it's accessible, when we have a web application, there may be some web-based vulnerability. So as a red teamers, to getting the initial access, you should understand about is there any web-based vulnerability in this particular a particular web application which is running on the container. So once you get the initial access on containers, you can perform basically sandboxing, escaping, or you can perform the lateral movement or pivoting to compromise whole cluster of EKS as well as ECS. So this is all about how we'll get the initial access using exploiting remote code execution vulnerabilities. So this is all about this video. Thank you so much for watching this video.